1 week season.
One week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back. It is Tuesday, May 20th. We are coming to you here for the fourth week of Wake and Snake. We are going to be live drafting on Drafters. Locking in here. We're going to be on their mini contest, $2 Drafters mini contest. But of course, as always, my name is Mike Johnson, mjohnson86, oneweekseason.com. Check us out. Our Best Ball Plus product, our Best Ball Basics. We also have multiple levels this season for the first time. So if you are just kind of dipping your toes in, a little bit more economical option for you there as well. We're going to go ahead and bring in my esteemed co-host, Billy Gableman, StatATL. Billy, welcome back. As always, how we doing on this lovely Tuesday?
We're doing great, Mike. Hope everything is going great with you. Excited to be back in the DFS and Best Ball streets, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead, and these drafts are filling up a little bit quicker these days. So I tried to proactively get into a draft, and it is already going. We are 4 rounds in, not in the 1 or 12 slot for the first time. So we're already through 4 rounds. It's kind of moving quickly. But we'll catch up. I have Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, Devontae Adams, and Omarion Hampton. So an all LA lineup so far. 2 Chargers, 2 Rams on the board at this point. Yeah, have you had a chance to do many drafts? I know you sent me one that you did. I know it's kind of a busy time for you, so just checking in, seeing where you're at.
Yeah, I think I've done about 20 in the mini. I've only done like 3 in the bigger contest so far, but I think that I want to try to get to at least 10 in the bigger contest by the end of June to kind of more maximize that bonus that they have. The promo, I believe, are doubled through the end of June, so that's about 10 days from now still. So yeah, the goal for me would be to try to get to 10 of those.
Yeah. What Billy's referring to there, for anyone unfamiliar, drafters in their main event, their $20 contest, they have a reward system. Once you get to 10 drafts, you get a $20 ticket, a ticket to the contest. Same at 25, 50, 75, and then 2 at 100, and you get a bonus funds if you max it out. But as you can see there on the screen, anything you complete by June 30th, they will actually double up. So that's what he's referring to there, trying to, he's taking it slow with his drafts, something I'm kind of doing as well, but going to try to get at least to that first milestone by the end of June. So, tortoise and the hare sort of situation, getting a little bit of the best of both worlds, getting that little extra EV with the free entry.
Yeah, what's your plan with that? Do you have a target in mind for that contest at all?
Yeah, I mean, just from and I talked about this more in depth to our Best Ball Plus subscribers. But basically, my thought is drafting more in August overall, but also there's other contests I want to target in August, and time and responsibilities, just the reality of it. I'm going to max the contest, so trying to figure out how to balance that. My thought is I will probably try to get to 25 through the end of June in the $20 contest. So I'll get 2, and then, the double that on June 30th, I'll get 2 more free entries. Of course, they've always got other promotions going on, whether it's deposit bonuses, Sometimes they'll have a flash bonus weekend where if you do 3 or 5 or 6 drafts, whatever it is, they'll add a ticket as well. So just kind of always, being open to it and trying to do that work-life balance thing that we all have to straddle as we Father Time marches on.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I feel like it's a good bit of balance between trying to leverage those promotions that they put out just, seemingly at will. That, this weekend, if you draft 10 teams, you get a free ticket. It's just making sure that I feel like I save enough teams. I have the same intention as you as to max the contest again this year, and want to make sure that I'm being strategic about saving some. So yeah, maybe we'll do 25 in June, but I think probably just 10. I think that's kind of the plan here.
Yeah. So I guess one of the bigger news things since last week is that the NFL schedule came out, so you can see next to all the players they have the bye weeks. So as we're building, of course, this is a cumulative scoring contest. It is not playoffs. So kind of every point matters. You're going against everybody as you go through it. So with that in mind, you kind of have to be a little more aware. I'm just going to take Travion Henderson from the Patriots, but you have to be more aware of those bye weeks, and it can really hurt you if you do have a really good team, especially that's up near the top. 5-10 points, that can be a 5-figure swing or more. So you don't want to be like, at this point, I've got Ladd McConkey, Omari and Hampton, Jalen Waddle, 2 receivers and a running back with week 12 buys. And they're, 3. It's not just how many, it's how critical they are to your team. And 2 of my first 4 receivers and my top running back all have that week 12 buy. So just something got to be at least somewhat aware of. You don't want to get to the end of a draft and say, oh, look, week 12, I'm going to need 2 of my receivers that I took in the 17th and 18th round. Their scores are going to count because those are the guys that we have a little less, stability or predictability in what kind of role they're going to have, especially drafting now in May.
Yeah, and I think, some of that variance, like if you were to get to that situation, that's something you got to be aware of while you're drafting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you notice that, you've taken a couple of guys, similar situation that you've got here, where maybe some of your key wide receivers or your first running backs are week 12 buy. When you get into those 15, 16, 17th rounds and you're taking your 5th, 6th running back or your whatever it is, 6th, 7th, 8th wide receiver, being conscious of the type of wide receiver that you're drafting, I think is really critical on those type of builds. You probably want to have more, you probably want to take on more risk because you're really swinging. You really want to swing for the fences because if you're probably going to have to be reliant on some of those later round picks, to me, I wouldn't take. It's a good example. I don't know that I would take like a Tyler Lockett in a draft like that, where his upside is probably a little bit more limited. He's probably not honestly the best example I could have come up with there, but just kind of shooting from the hip. Like I would rather take a shot on a rookie wide receiver later there,
or like a Xavier Legette for the Panthers. Like, does he emerge in his second year, or does same with Michael Wilson or Isaac Tesla for the Lions? That's kind of one, Tesla for the Lions or Malik Washington for the Dolphins. Those are a couple of younger guys who I find myself clicking them over Lockett a lot when I get to that decision point. Need another receiver at that point for the reasons you're stating. Like, I think Lockett could have a decent year. Things could kind of break right for him, but even if it does, what does that really look like? Whereas, Washington, Miami has consistently produced good pass catching scores. Tyreek Hill, questions around him. Washington kind of fits his speed in that scheme. So, I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, and I would totally agree.
Yeah, I like this this Robinson pick. I think we've talked about it in previous weeks. I kind of feel like when you get to him, that kind of feels like right about where the tier kind of drops off to guys with more question marks and around their role. Again, we are in May, but at this point, like Brian Robinson feels like a guy that he's probably going to see 12 to 14 touches. And then from there, you kind of look at the running backs who are on the board, and there's just more questions.
Yeah.
So I feel like Brian Robinson is a guy that I have found myself taking quite a bit in like the 8th round.
Yeah. And I actually, the next 2 running backs on the board there, Jalen Warren and Tyrone Tracy, Tracy especially, but both seem like they're kind of slipping further and further. I actually have a written piece that'll be coming out in the next couple days for Best Ball Basics and Best Ball Plus subscribers. But I talk a little bit about them among some other players in kind of similar situations, and kind of something that I'm seeing in just like a macro trend and how to approach it. I think that this time of year, it's just real easy to get locked into ADPs and rankings and kind of automatically perceive things the way that the field is. And I think there's like 5 situations I touch on, and Warren and Tracy, those backfields in particular, are 2 of them that just kind of caught my eye, just in terms of the certainty that people seem to be drafting them in, and versus the reality and kind of how these things often shake out. So Robinson, just a value I couldn't pass up on. I did end up with, now I have 2 of my top 3 running backs are week 12 buys. So I'll have to kind of keep that in mind going forward. We've got just at this turn, we had 3 rookie wide receivers, Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins, and Emeka Egbuka, all going there in 95 to 98 range. So those guys creeping up into the top 100. Seems like every year the kind of run on rookies gets a little sooner. So will be interesting to see like how high can some of those guys get. Looks like I'm almost on the clock here.
I feel like this 9th, 10th round, a lot of times you just kind of see this run on quarterbacks as well. Just kind of seems like the sweet spot.
All right, Jalen Warren goes. I'll go ahead and take Jonnu, pair him with Waddle. Another week 12 buy, so might be getting out over my skis a little bit here. But so yeah, that's where Robinson, Jonnu, both guys that, their values to me where I got them. I think Robinson is probably around round and a half earlier where I'd have him valued. Basically, him and Swift and James Conner and David Montgomery are all pretty similar to me and should be around that 6-7 turn. I've got all those guys ahead of like Pollard, Jones, and Pacheco. So, it's hard for me. It's really hard for me to pass him up, especially with, often I'm looking or thinking running back at that point. And then Jonnu, again, he was the tight end 2 or something. I have it. He was like a top 3 tight end down the stretch last season. So getting him in the 9th round outside the top 100 picks, I'm not going to pass on that.
Yeah, and I like what you did here, pairing him with Waddle. Just around the uncertainty of Tyreek Hill. So, like, if Waddle is having a really strong year, it's likely because Tyreek Hill, isn't there or isn't performing up to his previous past. And if that's the case, it's probably really benefiting Jonnu Smith as well. So I think if you're making that bet, there's nothing wrong with doubling down on it. I know it's something we've talked about in the past about, rising tides and rising all ships. And, if you're going to bet on a team, I like trying to incorporate multiple members of the team. I know behind the paywall, we talk a little bit more about, correlation and, whether it's worth it in situations and whether it's not. I know we'll get more into that in some more episodes later in the season, but just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Tyrone Tracy, just to kind of give the vibe of the article. So like we have Tyrone Tracy here, who's going pick 113. He had a nice season last year, as bad as the Giants season was overall. He had multiple 20-plus point games. I think he had 6 games of 15-plus PPR points. Previously played a lot of wide receiver, so he's fairly new to the running back position. Showed a lot of explosion. He was he was fun to watch. Like he pops off the screen when you watch him. And then you have Cam Scatabo, who out of Arizona State, he's a guy who's also fun to watch, does a lot of creative things. But it's one of those situations where I don't understand Scatabo jumping to 2 rounds, before Tracy. He's going here, and he's not an above average athlete. It's not an elite situation. So Scatabo is kind of a guy I'm shying away from, and I don't really understand, false flags is the title of the article. And it's just going to be some situations like that where there's some assumptions that seem to be being made by when and where players are being drafted that I don't understand. And that's one specifically that really stands out to me.
Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. You said this week?
Yep. I probably finish it up later this afternoon, and then just once the editors turn it around. So let's see on deck here.
Yeah, this is to me, this is a spot you could push quarterback probably, just because I think 3 out of the 4 teams to your right have 2 already.
Yeah, 2. One of the guys only has 1. One has 1 that's Lamar, and then another one has 2. I like Lawrence, Stroud, and McCarthy and Love, so yeah, I'll probably push it here. Kind of feel like there's a drop off at running back. I'm going to add Travis Etienne. Talked about him in previous weeks. Another one where, Tootin went above him here at 119. On some other sites, Tootin's going up around pick 100. So, kind of a similar situation to what we talked about with Tracy and Scatabo. So yeah, that kind of, if you're looking at my roster now, I have no quarterbacks yet, but I have 5 running backs, 5 receivers, with all those receivers being taken in the first 7 rounds, and then Jonnu Smith at tight end. So Love and Stroud go. Definitely be looking at a third or my first quarterback here. When it comes back to me, fine with Lawrence, pairing him with ETN, bet on Jacksonville. Really like McCarthy as well. So kind of whichever one falls to me, I'll take. And, if Lawrence just went, so if McCarthy goes, I'll live with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's something we'll talk about a little bit more behind the paywall, but don't love what the 12 holes done there with a third quarterback in the first 12 rounds. Not something we're big fans of.
Yep, for sure. Do want to talk about Rachaad White. I was actually talking with just some friends of mine recently about Bucky Irving, just kind of where he's going. And he's a player like I like, and he was great for DFS. He was on some really high placing lineups for me last season. Finished the season really strong, kind of became their workhorse. You look at week 10, he had 17, and then they had, I believe, their bye week 11, and then 27, 27, 3. I think he was injured that week. And then 13, 18, 23, 16, and 16. So, like, just a really strong end to the season. But also, they still, I think Rachaad White still will be involved on some level. Sean Tucker, one of my favorite late round picks is Sean Tucker for the Bucks. How many guys can you look at that have that? Let's see if I can
2
find
DP
them.
or something like that for Sean Tucker.
What's that?
I said Sean Tucker's ADP is like 220, 230. I've been taking him in like the 19th, 20th round, like in almost every draft.
He had a 34-point game against the Saints last season, and granted, the Saints were struggling and they were bad at that point and whatever, but it's a really good offense. The staff has talked him up, and he's shown with opportunity what kind of upside he has. A lot of those guys you take late in drafts, you can tell the story of how they would get the opportunity, but you don't necessarily know for sure how they would handle said opportunity. So Tucker, pretty stable offensive environment. We've seen the Bucks backfield be extremely productive for a couple straight years. So one of my favorite late targets. And with Irving, a guy I really like, but I also, I look at the 3 running backs in the 3rd round: Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, even like Breece Hall, or like Omarion Hampton going to the Chargers, Joe Mixon with the Texans. Like, all these running backs who are going much, just after or even around round and a half later, how different, it's not that different of situations. And you could argue some of them are in a lot better situations. So, Bucky's one, him and Rashee Rice, actually, who went 23rd here, who feels like they're kind of being priced to the max, I guess, kind of like assuming absolute best case scenario.
There are, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on future episodes. I prefer Matt Stafford on this build for you. If you were taking a quarterback there, just because how much I don't know that you need to, just because we saw the last turn 3 guys took quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Kyle Pitts again, and we'll get into this. I'll have I'm going to break up my training sessions a little bit more this year so that they're a little bit easier to digest, not quite as long, and easier to go back and find specific things. So I'm going to do one on approach for each of, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, just from the standpoint of, how I'm thinking about each of those positions. And like I said, if I do, if I cover a bunch of topics in a 50 or 60-minute training session for our Best Ball Plus subscribers, then when you want to go back and how did he say that? How did he word that? How's he approaching it? It can be like harder to find, right? So I'm going to try to make it a little bit more digestible this year. I'm also putting it into like a training course that all our Best Ball Plus subscribers will have access to. Or people who aren't Best Ball Plus subscribers will be able to purchase as like just a separate course in the marketplace, kind of like our DFS thing. So
nice.
Just a kind of an aside there. I was able to add Matthew Stafford. Obviously, I've got Puka and Adams here. So and Stafford, I think he kind of ties nicely with McCarthy, who could be a little volatile in his first year as the starter. They have different bye weeks as well. So able to double up there, paid off pushing him a little bit. Again, that's to your point earlier, kind of paying attention to where you're drafting and the people around you. Took Pitts there, kind of a calculated guess, knowing that There is after me, the guy in the 9 hole. He already had 2 quarterbacks. Actually, I believe everybody already had 2 quarterbacks.
Some of them had 3.
Yeah. One had 3, and the others all had 2 at the time I took Pitts. So then it becomes, okay, I really like Cam Ward. Obviously, I have Stafford, or I have Puka and Adams. But you had Ward, Geno, Sam Darnold, A-Rich, Stafford. Like, those are kind of all the guys that are available there. Obviously, my preference there was Stafford, but also knowing the room. Like, there's a chance that no quarterbacks were taken because everybody already had 2. If one gets taken, pretty safe assumption Ward would be the first one. Like, other people would take Ward over Stafford. And then also, if somebody else, and you see Geno went here at 159, 2 picks before I got Stafford. But stacking, the Rams are such a concentrated team, such a concentrated offense that me having both Puka and Adams makes it much less likely that anyone is going to take Stafford in those 4 or 8 picks, 4 teams, because none of them have a Rams receiver to pair him with. Just the way it works out, other than Kyron Williams, who isn't really like last year wasn't used that much as a pass catcher. The Rams, basically, it's Devontae and Puka, and then they've got a bunch of guys being drafted later. So just kind of reading the board that way, felt really confident that Stafford would still be there at 161. I'm glad he was.
Yep, I'm with you there.
All right, so I'm up now. I'm going to go ahead and take DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins, obviously, big name talent. Last year, he was on the Chiefs. Wasn't overly impressive. Was he traded mid-year last year? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I think so.
I gotta look this up. Yeah, he was on the Titans, and then he got traded to the Chiefs mid-season. I think he had an injury he dealt with as well. So he was kind of all over the place. Didn't really do much for Tennessee. Obviously, their offensive situation was atrocious. But now going to Baltimore in the 15th round, he is like he has very strong hands. He's a great route runner. You look at Baltimore; they're known for their running game, but I think Hopkins is such a huge upgrade after Bateman and Flowers. Both of those guys have battled injuries. Wouldn't be surprised if they miss some time. Mark Andrews has missed time. I think Hopkins could, he could be like a red zone, a big time red zone threat. So getting him in the 15th round, tying him to, a good offense, bye week fits. He's a guy that, at first it's easy to just love the younger guys, right? When you start drafting some of these teams and you're thinking about what all that looks like, and you're coming off the NFL draft. But I do think
take Roshan. Okay, do it, John.
I got you.
I just like a guy with some more upside later in the year. With you've got 2 guys by week 12, 2 guys by week 14. On this team, so I think later in the season, he's a guy I think could be pertinent. I don't think I've taken much DeAndre Swift, despite being a UGA homer.
And I think
I don't see it for him this year.
Yeah, and I think there's some value as well there in that you look at my first 2 running backs, Amari and Hampton, Travion Henderson, some rookie running backs who I really like the outlook for them, and they could be awesome. They could take over and have huge years right from the start, but also could see, sometimes, coaches will, you have their coaches are Harbaugh and Vrabel, right? So like they're going to defer to veterans. You're going to earn everything, that kind of mindset. So they might be eased in a little bit. So Johnson, a guy who, as the roster currently stands, he should be involved. He's a guy who, picking a running back in the 16th round, it should be on a good offense and should at least be on the field. Like, I don't think DeAndre Swift's going to be, an 80% back. I think Johnson will be involved. So he might be able to give me some usable weeks and contribute early in the season on this roster while those rookies kind of find their way and earn the trust of their coaches.
We both know who I'm hoping is there for you in one pick.
Aaron Rodgers.
No. And he is. We've talked. You even mentioned him. I'm on Isaac this year, man. I think that at an ADP of 200, that gives you. I just think the upside is there in May.
Yeah,
Malik's gonna be there for you later if you really want another week 12 guy.
Yeah, no, I'll take Isaac. I think and we've talked about him in past weeks. A guy who, again, him and Hopkins trying to tie guys on good offenses, with potential big weekly upside. You look at this roster as well. We talked about the Rams with Stafford a little bit, but Puka and Adams, those guys are going to be target hogs. Puka's going to be near the league lead in targets per game for sure. If either one of them misses, the other one's going to be a massive target hog. Lad McConkey also is kind of built that way, somewhat for stable production. Had a big end to last season. So you've got kind of at least two spots most weeks kind of locked up at the wide receiver position. Pretty good production. Waddle and Ayuk, a little bit higher variance archetypes, but also like solid offenses who consistently produce. Over time, they are going to likely give you, some positive outlook there. I'm going to take Elijah Arroyo, the Seahawks. Just wanted to talk about him, and it's kind of fits, and I'll get into this on the tight end discussion, but kind of fits the mold of some of these late tight ends that we're looking for. Super athletic guy. If he didn't have some injuries, probably is a first round pick, talent wise. Ended up going in the second round, and you look at the Seahawks, they have Jackson Smith-Njigba, obviously strong end to 2024 for him. But then Cooper Kupp, who, we don't really know what to expect where he's at. And then not much else. So you have talent and potential opportunity there for Arroyo. So at a position like tight end, that's kind of high upside pick where if things break right for him and he gets opportunity, he could easily give you a top 10, top 12 type tight end season. And we'll take that for sure.
Yeah, I like it. Hey, so I had a question. I want to get your opinion on something. And so you took DeAndre Hopkins. We talked about him a little bit in the 15th. How do you think his addition affects guys? Traditionally a little bit heavier red zone targets for Baltimore.
Who's this?
I was asking how do you think DeAndre Hopkins' addition? How do you think that affects like Mark Andrews, who traditionally has seen a good bit of his production come through red zone usage?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at that team as a whole, so kind of Zay Flowers has kind of become the guy. But I mean, where they're being drafted, they're probably a team that I don't know if you read my uncertain situations article, but probably a spot that could have been included in there as well is this Baltimore wide receiver tight end situation. You have Andrews going around the 9-10 turn. Isaiah Likely you have going, in the 13th round. Rashad Bateman going in the, 10th, 11th round. And then Hopkins in the 15th. So, to me, it's kind of a situation where it's like these are guys who they're all being priced in a way that how they're projecting, which is they're kind of all eating each other's projections. But the reality is that someone there probably is going to get hurt and miss a decent amount of time at some point. And there's a lot less questions around how. I think last year, just Baltimore they'd run out so many like different receivers. I remember like in DFS when they'd be on short slates and I'd write up like for the 2-game or 3-game, like there was literally like Bateman and Flowers, and then there were like 3 other receivers that were seeing like 10 to 15 snaps in a game. And I think some of that gets cleaned up. And also if a guy misses, it gets really clean with who those top guys are. So yeah, I think when they're all on the field, it'll be really hard to project for DFS. But for season-long things like this, I think taking shots just kind of on that situation when guys fall in drafts, that sort of thing, is probably the wise way to approach it, kind of embracing that we don't know.
You considering Aaron Rodgers here?
I am, in large part just because of where we're at in this draft. I look at my receiver room, really like Diami Brown. We'll talk about him before we get off here, but added him. But the issue here is he is, ended up being a 4th wide receiver with that week 8 bye. So thinking I might try to add another wide receiver here instead. I'm going to go with Savion Williams for the Packers. Not super high. Again, it's a 3rd-round pick who was kind of surprising. He went where he was. Somewhat seems like a gadget guy, but also don't know if you heard or saw, but Jaden Reed apparently requested a meeting with the Packers front office after the Matthew Golden selection. Christian Watson, I think he's probably not going to play at all this season. So it's a situation where he's blocked by a lot of things on paper right now, but also those things could kind of open up. And if something does materialize with Jaden Reed, or if Jaden Reed just gets hurt, he's a guy who I think has battled injuries throughout his college and pro career. He seems like he could step right into that spot. And Reed obviously had a disappointing 2024. His ADP's come down a bit this year. He's around that 7-8 turn. You can see him went 86th in this draft. But Williams, it's similar to what so you see Daniel Jones went in the 20th round. And I think Hilo touched on this in his last show on YouTube, but basically the Colts went with Daniel Jones just because his skill set is relatively similar to Anthony Richardson, whereas last year they were going back and forth from Richardson to Flacco, and it just created they had to completely change their offense when a quarterback went out, right? So I think from that standpoint, like Williams is a guy who directly backs up he can directly do all the things that Reed does if Reed were to miss time or get traded or anything like that. So just from we talked about earlier, like upside late in drafts, I think Tyler Lockett was your comparison. Williams is a guy that it's hard to rank him high. I mean, I'm not very high on him in my rankings, but on specific builds, I do think he makes sense. I think there's enough uncertainty and enough upside combined with his skill set to kind of fit here. Also wanted to talk about Dyami Brown. He had a very good end to the season last year. He actually was starting to be used more, and then Noah Brown, I think, got injured. Your boy Noah Brown. And so he had some opportunity, but then he got hurt. Week 16, he had a decent outing. Then Olamide Zaccheaus, he had a couple nice games, but then in the playoffs, he had 19.9 and 15.8 points, obviously on that Commanders playoff run. And money talks. The Jaguars, they paid $10 million to him. All the attention to Travis Hunter, to Brian Thomas. But I think Brown is pretty clearly in the driver's seat as the third wide receiver there. So, yeah, he's a guy that I'll be pretty consistently targeting late in drafts.
Yeah, I like that shout, especially with Evan Ingram in Denver now. Just, Brenton Strange is a guy that I personally do like taking shots on in the later rounds for a tight end. But yeah, I mean, I think Dyami Brown offers similar upside. One of those two is going to be the number 3 target out of this offense, and I'm expecting Jacksonville. Personally, I think they're going to be better than consensus as an offense.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that division, and there's loads of opportunity, right? There is. I mean, the Colts obviously. This is like a make or break year for Anthony Richardson, probably as well for Shane Steichen. The Texans' new offensive coordinator, but they're the favorite in the division, but they're also among the 3 divisions. The South is the one that doesn't have like a clear dominant type team that everyone else would have to really kind of exceed expectations to overcome. The Bills in the East, the Chiefs, and I would say the Broncos have joined them in the West. And then the Ravens obviously have been a dominant team for years. And then the Steelers and Bengals are very good organizations as well. So the South, it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if any of the teams, really any of the teams in the division won it. And I wouldn't, outside of Houston, I think any of the other 3 teams, I wouldn't be shocked if they finished last. But that's where sometimes you can find some value in potentially high-scoring games for our purposes.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's interesting. You were talking about Packers wide receivers, and I think it's something maybe we spend an episode, even if it's one of the ones we do behind the paywall or something, just talking about some of these earlier round guys. Like, to me, like Rashee Rice, where he goes, borderline like the worst. I have an opinion on someone else actually, but like Rashee Rice is probably like the second worst in my book. Like second round pick. Like, you right now, like, there is no upside to where he goes now. Like, he's being drafted for like literally the best case scenario where he doesn't get suspended, where the Chiefs offense is humming and hawing.
And he's healthy.
And it's just like, he could give you that. But like, is the situation where he becomes like, I don't think he has wide receiver 1 overall upside.
Well, yeah, that's where like Travis Kelce is still there, and he's not the Travis Kelce of old. But you look at Rice to start last season, he had 17, 18, 29 PPR points his first 3 games before Patrick Mahomes took his knee out on that interception return. But yeah, he's potentially facing a suspension, coming back from a torn ACL. And on paper, like, he's going to project well, he's going to look good, but also, Xavier Worthy was barely playing at that point early in the season. Like, he kind of had like a gadget role. He had a nice game week 1 last year. Xavier Worthy did, against the Ravens. But then if you look at it after that, he kind of disappeared. He was 1, 2, he had 4.25, and then he had a couple decent weeks, then a 5.4, and then weeks 9 and 10, -1 and 2.1. So like, he was hitting on occasional big plays, but he wasn't like an integral part of their game plan. Whereas now you look at heading into next season, and Xavier Worthy is coming off a 8-157-2 Super Bowl. He's coming off a 6-85-1 conference championship. Hollywood Brown didn't even play until week 16 last season. He's back. So, there's...
And it took Jalen Royals,
you look at Rashee Rice, and it's like, yes, he had these nice games. We saw we saw the potential there, but also he's being drafted ahead of some guys that just have a lot less to overcome.
Yeah, good shot there.
Before we head out, go ahead and I'll read off my roster for those listening on the podcast feed. So quarterback, J.J. McCarthy and Matthew Stafford. Running back, Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson, early rookies that I took in the 4th and 6th round, followed by Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, Travis Etienne, and Roshan Johnson. In my wide receiver room, Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, DeAndre Hopkins, Isaac Tesla, Diami Brown, and Savion Williams. And then the tight end room, Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, Elijah Arroyo. That is a 2-6-9-3 build. Pretty common approach that I take on drafters. And really we'll get into the nitty-gritty and specifics of why a lot of that is this week and really all summer as we are drafting and we are preparing to hopefully take some things down this season in the best ball streets. So I have it on the bottom. If you are new to drafters, if you're new to best ball, drafters, in my opinion, best place to play. Use code OWS on your first deposit if you're new to drafters. Again, that's drafters.com. That will give you a 100% deposit match on your first deposit up to $100. So put $100 on, get an extra $100 in bonus funds, get $200 to play with. We just drafted in the $2 tournament there. So theoretically could do 100 drafts of that, could do 10 of the main event. Well, really 11 because you get a free one, or 12 because you get a second one if you do it by June 30th. So lots of options there. But yeah, Billy, you have anything to add before we let the people go?
No, and I know you play a little bit in the PGA streets. I don't want to shout out is the wrong word, but we had a loss in the community just 2 days ago. James the Degenerate 75. For those of you who play any PGA type of stuff, really, really great guy. I was blessed to have gotten to know him over the past years, but succumbed to cancer on Sunday. So just make sure you're keeping him and his family in your thoughts and prayers if you're still watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see that on Twitter, and I was wondering and kind of hoping you would bring it up. Definitely thoughts and prayers to his family. Really unique and pretty cool individual. Just his approach and mindset, especially over the last year and a half or however long it's been since he kind of announced what he was going through and dealing with. Just a pretty inspiring person, I guess is the best way to say it. So really sad news to hear there, but really respected how he approached things and did things, and feel like he's one of those guys in the community who did it for the right reasons. So definitely a tough situation, but thoughts and prayers to him and his family. And to all the OWS family and anyone else out there watching, hug your family members and make the most of life and enjoy every minute of it. So thank you for joining us. As always, Billy, thank you for that shout and for being an esteemed co-host as always. And we will look forward to seeing you all next week. 1 week season, Best Ball Plus. I'm Mike. He's Billy. We're out.
1 week season. 1 week season.